She was the first call I made after Charlie.
Okay, here we go. 5:50 KTSA News Time is 10:08. Good morning. Welcome to the weekend. We kick it off with our Gang of Four. We're going to meet the gang right away and get started right away on the big stories in the news today and this week. And we have incredible star power. I don't know, Karen, can you believe this? The star power in this room is unbelievable today on Gang of Four. It's like if this was baseball, the All-Star game is happening here today on Gang of Four. Let me start with the lady in the room, Trish DeBerry Mejia, who has her own advertising and PR and has been a candidate for mayor, and a lot of people think might someday run for office again, and of course is involved, even when you're not running, you're always involved in politics. So Trish, welcome back. You look great, by the way.
Thank you.
Get a look at this fashion plate outfit we have going on here today.
Very nice.
Yes, you look very nice today.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody does, but
yes.
I just wanted to start with
you. You're sounding rather chipper. It must be the holiday spirit. It's, you know,
well,
I don't hear quite the cynical Jack that I know. What is it?
He'll be here shortly, but I'm feeling a new freedom because I admitted on the air last hour that I'm a sexist.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
So now now I don't have to pretend.
Yeah. Okay.
It's very liberating.
So I was going to say very liberating. You're out of the closet.
Well, now wait a minute. That's a different show. But anyway, I'm surprised you're even here. I thought you'd turn around your car and go back home when you heard that I was a sexist. But Trish showed up anyway.
I'm here.
For Gang of Four, we're always glad to have her. State Representative Jose Menendez is here. He was on our show this week making news with his announcement that he's not going to run for Congress. But look, I'm glad you're sticking around here.
Well, thanks, Jack. It's good to be here. I mean, you know, we've been with you and your friends. We're friends for many years.
I was at your wedding.
That's right. Many years, and I have always enjoyed the show. And I think you know, being here with these two friends next to me, we're able to talk about how this community has a lot to offer. Yeah. And so it's you know, it's times like this when you know, the decks are being shuffled, that you have to make some tough choices.
Well, you did, like, I'm going to embarrass you now, but you did the right thing by your kids, and that's never the wrong thing to do. You're never going to regret that, right?
I agree completely. I think no one ever says that I should have spent more time at work.
Exactly.
On their deathbed. And I think the other thing is, you know, the expectations that are there, you know, set by both, you know, Henry and I were just talking about how Henry B. Gonzalez set the expectations of being back home every weekend in the district.
Right.
So whether we move the children up to D.C. or whether they stayed here, I'd still be missing them either during the week or on the weekend. Yeah. And there are a lot of important things that are happening when they're 11 and 9 and 4 years old.
Agreed, absolutely. And also on our Gang of Four today, former San Antonio Mayor Henry Cisneros.
Jack,
Mr. Mayor, welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be back at KTSA. I grew up with KTSA.
Yeah.
I remember doing my chores around the house, cleaning windows and cutting the yard to Ricky Ware playing.
There you go.
Playing 1950s and 60s rock and roll. And I actually remember Ricky doing some kind of a promotion where he stayed up in a downtown window. 24 hours, 48 hours. He was trying to set the record on staying awake in a public setting. But Ricky Ware used to do those.
We call that Occupy San Antonio.
Yeah, exactly.
A new thing.
So I go back a long way with KTSA.
And Bruce Hathaway.
And Bruce Hathaway and Logan Stewart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Logan Stewart was my time.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
You were just you were all having a very fascinating conversation about local politics. But Mr. Mayor, as you look at all of this shuffling that went on, and it sort of started with Charlie Gonzalez's announcement, but it was also triggered by the redistricting.
Right.
You watch all these people trying to make their decisions, and these are decisions you had to make over the years as well.
Well, it actually started, I think, with the redistricting map, because a lot of people have been waiting on to see where the map sorts out. And then, in the midst of that, Charlie Gonzalez decided not to run for Congress, who, by the way, has been a very good congressman, and as we know, the Gonzalez family has a legacy in that 20th Congressional District. 38 years, Congressman Henry B. Gonzalez, then 14 years, his son Charlie. But this is clearly a moment of great change, and it's likely to set things in place for us for a decade or more, because whoever wins these seats likely will hold them for a while. As we know, the pattern is long service. So there were decisions that need to be made. I was impressed with how quickly they were made. Charlie announced on Saturday afternoon 2 weeks ago, and that evening Julian was making telephone calls saying, you know, he had made the decision to switch from the 35th to the 20th.
Joaquin.
Joaquin.
Yeah.
It was logical.
It might have been Julian.
No, it was Joaquin. It was Joaquin. And then the next day or so, he's in a position to announce.
I know.
So I think it was the next day. It was Sunday the next day.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So quick decisions were made, very decisive. That's a good sign that people are capable of making those decisions.
Well, you brought up something I wanted to ask you about and ask the gang about. We have seen in South Texas the tradition of long service, people holding onto a congressional seat, and in the case of the Gonzalez family, the seat even staying in the family. Obviously, some people see virtue in that. Other people say we're better served by citizen legislators. We're better served by people who are coming and going and fresh faces and new ideas and new blood in Washington or Austin. So how do you balance what you see as the advantage of this long service with the advantage of having citizen lawmakers and citizen legislators?
Well, I do believe in the concept of people who know how to do something else, who have excelled in medicine or academics or business or other forms of civic life, and then coming into public service for a time and then going back and doing other things. We have a pretty strong tradition of that in San Antonio at the local level. But there's also a lot to be said in Congress for being there long enough to learn the ropes and to gain some seniority and have some power. I mean, the only way you're going to be a chairman of a committee in Washington is to be there 10, 15, even 20 years. And that's the only way the system works in order to get to a position where you can really make a difference both on national policy as well as things you bring home. So I have no problem with trying to hold people in positions for a long period of time.
Is the public better served by that, Jose and Trish? Do you think that's for us? I understand that it works better if you're trying to build up your influence in Washington or Austin. Are we better served by that?
I don't necessarily think so. I mean, I understand what Henry's talking about and the fact that you've got to build up longevity and it requires 10 or 15 years, but I think that underscores that the system is still broken. I mean, if you have to stay up there that long to be able to get a leadership position, I think it's refreshing to have new blood that comes in. I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you that if somebody's doing a great job, they need to stay there. And that's why sometimes I have a hard time with term limits, because I do feel like ultimately, the voter has the authority. Either you vote the bums out or you keep them there. But I do think, 38 and 40 years in Congress is too long for somebody to be there. And it just means that more folks need to step up and challenge and get in there and mix it up. Because I do think citizens, or, folks from a business background, I think bring, refreshing change into government.
What about that, Jose? Because we say we want what Trish is describing, but we wind up often voting in patterns that reflect what Henry Cisneros is saying, which is, my guy is now the chairman, or my guy is now the ranking Democrat, so I'm going to keep him in there. He can do stuff.
The Texas House is a good example of a combination of what we're hearing. You've got about half of the House that's got a tremendous longevity. And you know what? The best term limits, for all those people who out there who think that we need to have term limits, well, then get out and vote. Get out and vote,
exactly
and vote for your candidates and encourage either support. One of the I can remember when term limits were first put in. One of the folks that people were bemoaning was when Mayor Wolf had to leave the mayorship because of term limits, and people, oh my goodness, what
Ron Hardberger,
Mayor Hardberger. So all these people who've been I guess victims of term limits at City Hall are showing us that maybe we should be making the decisions, the voters, not an artificial expiration limit.
Well, we figured out locally that the term limits were too short.
Right.
So we've extended them, and now instead of a total of 4 years, people can serve 8, which is kind of a nice, good compromise for the public.
But a lot of people, they hit those term limits, and they then run for the legislature, or they run for county commissioner. We had Jennifer Ramos announce this week she's leaving in the middle of her last term. I mean, you're not term limiting their public service. You're just saying, we want that position you're in to have some new blood in it.
Well, 4 years was too short.
That may be.
I mean, two-year
way too
terms
restrictive.
was very restrictive, and it just takes a lot. You know, your first term, you're sort of learning the ropes and what buttons to push to make things happen. Then you're reelected, and the first day of your reelection, you are a lame duck. That's what we had.
Right.
Thank goodness Mayor Hardberger's leadership and that council changed it, and now we have 4 two-year terms for a total of 8, which at least gives a person like Mayor Castro a chance to be there and look out over the long haul. I hope he's there the full 8 years, because he's got a better chance of redoing Hemisphere. He's got a better chance of putting in light rail. He's got a better chance of forging you know, his economic development objectives in energy if he's got 8 years to work with.
Yep.
That's what I served, was 8 years, and it was a good span of time to get things done.
Would this argument then extend to Congress? Because if every member of Congress was term limited, you'd be redefining what seniority meant. You wouldn't need to be there for as long because nobody was there for as long.
Well, I think a good barometer of that, you'd have to ask yourself, let's look at the California legislative system and see, do you agree with it? They have term limits. And what I've noticed in California, they end up flip-flopping. Let's say if they're serving in the House, they end up running them for the Senate, and then in the Senate, and then go into the House. And I'm not sure it's working any better for them.
So there's a permanent political class, and they're going to be there one way or the other.
It seems to be that that's the way it's worked out there. I think that we need to really demand more from ourselves, the electorate, to say we need to engage more in the campaigns. We need to. I mean, when you're having a 7% turnout, 6% turnout, then how do you blame the politicians? Shouldn't you be blaming the folks that aren't showing up to vote? I mean, I'm out there working, going to neighborhood meetings, Christmas parties, doing whatever I have to do to engage people, to say, here's what I stand for, here's what I'm going to work for, I'd like your support. But I mean, it's like, sometimes it feels like I'm pulling teeth to get people to the polls. And so I'm not sure what it's going to take to get people engaged. Because if you get people engaged, then you don't need term limits. I ran against 2 incumbents, one for city council and one for the state legislature, who could have been there longer had I not challenged them. And so it's like what Trish says. You know, I didn't think they were doing a good job, and I was able to get the folks engaged. But I mean, heck, one of them, the victories was by 41 votes, and the other one was by 79.
I remember.
And so, you know, I mean, those things weren't landslides by any stretch of the imagination. But so it's very difficult to beat an incumbent, without a doubt. But it can be done.
All right, we're going to talk more about all of this and one career politician in particular when we come back with our gang of 4 who's in the news this week. But first, on a Friday morning, it's 10:21 into the 550 KTSA newsroom. Here's Karen.
Has to be right.
Christmas movies and then wake up and have
Donuts.
in the morning.
Guys, that's exactly right. We strike a chord.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
10:24, the news and talk of San Antonio, 550 KTSA. On this gang of 4 today, former Mayor Henry Cisneros, State Representative Jose Menendez, and Trish DeBerry Mejia. We'll say future something, because we still think she's going to run again. All right, Newt Gingrich. Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
I said it a long time ago.
Who would have thought? You said it a long time ago. What did you predict would happen?
Well, when you looked at the debates that were taking place, and I watched all of them from the Republican field, he's so incredibly comfortable up there in that format, because, I mean, whether you have an issue with Newt or you don't, he's incredibly intelligent.
He knows his stuff.
And he knows his stuff, and he has a lot of institutional knowledge about things. And when he would answer a question, it wasn't like it was scripted or rehearsed. I mean, it just was very natural.
Right.
Now, he may not have been the target of the debates, you know, whether it was Herman Cain or whether it was Rick Perry, but it just was like, I just felt like I always wanted to hear more from Newt.
Yeah.
Did it help him, Mayor Cisneros, that up until recently he was really off the radar? So his debate performances were, as Trish mentioned, always kind of in the background of more attention being on the front.
I mean, I think Trish is right. He just is a more substantive person, and it comes across. He has. He doesn't have to make it up or be scripted. It's in his head. I have a history with Newt.
Who doesn't?
Well, I was HUD secretary when he, in 1994, the midterm of the Clinton period, took over and became Contract for America. And part of the contract was the elimination of the department that I headed, Housing and Urban Development. And he, as Speaker, would not see Clinton cabinet officers. He wouldn't see them. He had no interest. But a very good friend in the Congress, Republican from New York, Rick Lazio, kind of intervened for me and got me into the Speaker's office. Rick and I went in to see Newt Gingrich, and I laid out a plan for transformation of the department, and he was all ears. He said, if you do that, then you don't have to worry about me. I'm not coming after you. And we had a very good discussion, and that conversation has continued over the years. He was just here last March. We had an event at a synagogue related to Latino and Jewish relationships, particularly on subjects like immigration, because the Jewish community knows a lot about immigration. I mean, they have a long history, both in Israel, of accepting immigrants, Ethiopians and people from Russia and others, but also in the Jewish migration to the United States. Newt came to that meeting and did a great job talking about kind of humanitarian instincts in immigration and how we need to have sounder immigration policy. So here's a guy who's willing to, think outside the box. I think people like that. Now, will he be the nominee? I don't know. Right now, I'd hate to be in Romney's shoes because he seems to be on the defensive and backtracking. But I think the Obama people would love to have Newt Gingrich because he generally talks his way out of.
Well, and it's interesting to me too that you have people like several just this week. Tom Coburn, the senator from Oklahoma, very respected guy, who says Newt Gingrich is the last person I would support for president.
Well,
his
people
fellow
who served with him
Republican
in Congress.
Now, this is what I'm saying.
He's got 5 Republican congressmen. And Romney has 50
But
who served with Newt.
Why is it, Mr. Mayor, that the people who know him best like him least? As a candidate, at least, maybe not personally.
He is a difficult person to take. He's I know Newt Gingrich. I don't think I would call him a friend, but I have respect for him. And he's very full of himself. Very, very full of himself.
Are all politicians that way?
No, there's all kinds of people.
Do you have to be, do you have to have a big ego to stay?
You have to have an ego enough to offer yourself to the public, but you don't have to lord it over other people and express to yourself you're the smartest person in the room.
He does.
Yeah.
Well, I think 2 weeks ago, or 10 days ago, he said, I will be the nominee. He was very sure of himself and very confident. It came across a little egotistical. And that's the problem that I think Newt will have down the road is he can be somewhat condescending, a bit elitist.
It'll be a free-for-all.
But Romney coming after him, about the fact that I've been married for, 37 years, 42 years to one woman, trying to make light of Newt's multiple wives, they were doing polling about the fact that he's been divorced 3 times and how much of an impact does it have, and really nobody really cares,
So how many divorces would you have to have before it would matter?
Yeah, exactly, that's
Figure
right.
out what's the number now.
I want to get in the Elizabeth Taylor category.
Is that what it is? All right. Well, I can understand the points about his debating skills, and the anecdote you told, Mr. Mayor, is very insightful. I don't think he'll wear well over the long haul, and it's very different to be the Speaker of the House and be an inside guy operating in that very, cloistered world versus being out there every day and being in people's living rooms every night. I just don't see that wearing well, and frankly, I don't think the Romney people have too much to worry about because they do have a national organization. He is a very good candidate, and I think at some point they may not have to run an ad or have a moment. I think he'll do it to himself.
Oh, I think he will too.
And not all at once. It won't be some sort of gaffe because he's not built that way. He's a smart guy. It'll just be a wearing down of, here we go
because as
again.
the weeks go on, his head will get bigger and bigger and bigger, and
he generally
will
talks his way.
self-implode.
He talks his way into a problem. But I still would hate to be Romney today because you're trying to be solid, steady, respectful of the process, and here's a guy who's just nipping at you and smart and keeps you on the defensive. It's not a good feeling, as to be the front runner in it. Well, he's no longer the front runner. Newt is now the front runner.
The whole Republican primary system just seems to be somewhat disconnected from everyday America, and I think that's the biggest problem with the Republican Party is that when they run in their primaries, they're running. Sometimes they seem to be trying to outright themselves. How far right can I get? And I think the majority of America is somewhere more towards the center. Even folks who identify as Republicans come across more as moderate when you talk to them one-on-one. Yeah, maybe fiscally very conservative and would like to see us, pare down the debt and do things better from a fiscal perspective. But I mean, sometimes some of these things that you're hearing coming out from these folks that are trying to run to the right, I think alienate people, and I think that's what's
Jack. I think you're right about Newt generally, talking his way out of things and so forth, and wearing people down. But you got to break it down to the primaries. He's like 20 points up in Iowa, right? The union leader endorsed him in New Hampshire. He's 20 plus points up in South Carolina. Those are the first 3 primaries and caucuses. So he could have a head of steam that makes this inevitable.
I think Romney's in trouble.
I got to tell you though, in those same surveys, you have 60 or 70% of the voters say they're undecided. So these percentages only reflect voters that are giving the pollsters a preference. And even among those preferences, it's pretty soft. I don't think it's a love fest with Gingrich. I think they've settled on
the polling data that I've seen. When you look at intensity of support, for Romney versus Gingrich,
it's higher.
No, Gingrich has very intense support.
But there's still a lot of undecided voters.
I absolutely agree with you.
And I think there will be people who will remain intensely admiring of Newt Gingrich even as they switch their votes to Romney. Because remember, for a lot of Republicans, the end game here is the repeal of Obamacare and the limiting of President Obama to 1 term. And if they think they're taking a chance, they're not going to go with Gingrich or anybody else.
Normally you'd be right, and I would say the press, who would have a field day taking Newt Gingrich apart, right, over the next couple of months, we'll try to do that. But in Spanish we have a word, which is sinvergüenza. You can't embarrass the guy. Right. you can't embarrass him because it's all out there already.
Well, and the other thing is,
so
it's not his first rodeo.
The press,
so you'll be able to fade the heat.
He just keeps going, and so the press is going to try their best, and he'll make it a circus. And look, the Iowa primaries. How many days from now? How many days? About 45 days.
Right.
So we're talking like a 6-week run here. It's going to be very interesting.
Well, the other thing, Jack, the intensity is important. What Trish said is because we just talked about it during the break, getting people to the polls. So many of your undecideds, just as they're undecided in who they're going to support, may on election day decide not to show up. So unless you have committed, very, very committed supporters, those are the only people you can count on that are going to show up. So in my opinion, if the intensity is just as, if not more important, because you need to know on election day that's the only person that matters whether they're for you or not.
I think the best thing for the country would be Obama and Romney, 2 very responsible people sort of laying out different visions for the country in a respectful way. But the Republican primaries may trump all of that, may change all of that.
All right, let's talk about Rick Perry. Rick Perry, where do we start? I know. Rick Perry, his latest TV ad is one in which he compares putting gays in the military to not allowing children to celebrate Christmas in school. And in this ad, which he put on YouTube, he now has, it actually has more dislikes
by a ratio of 7,000
yeah, like
300,000.
something like that. Yeah, like something like 400,000 dislikes to 5,000 likes. Or
it's
something
ridiculous.
Like that.
Well, there's so much they've disabled, like you talked about. You can't like or dislike it.
I don't really know. I don't know what they're thinking. I mean, it clearly didn't work. The idea that he was going to waltz in, that he was the guy they were waiting for, is that it? That he thought, this won't require a lot of explaining. I'm a Southern governor with a strong job creation record. Nothing else will matter. Is that what they thought?
I have a theory that in politics, the truth always comes out. That is to say, the public is wise enough that when you lay it all out there, they kind of get what they want. They figure it out, and they strip back the layers of the onion, and deep down inside, they know what they want. And Rick Perry on paper made sense, as you say, Southern conservative, evangelical support, etc. But then he opened his mouth, and the whole world could see this guy's just not ready for prime time.
So does that mean these debates are really very valuable? I mean, people have run hot and cold. There's so many of them, never before so many. Seems to be one every few days. Are they valuable in the sense that somebody like Perry might have skated by in the old days?
Absolutely. I think the most important, the value out of them is not so much what the answers, the questions. It's the process of seeing people, how they react under pressure.
Demeanor.
The demeanor and their ability to react on the fly. And so, you know, many times, most politicians, they've got their speech scripted and they're in a friendly environment. You're not seeing an honest reflection of their capacity. And so when they're hit with a tough question or they're hit with a criticism, how are they going to respond? And I think that's when you start seeing what's really inside. And I think that's what Henry mentioned, is that as soon as you peel back some of the layers of the onion, you know, for those of us who served in Austin for any amount of time with the governor, we kind of say, we already knew.
You saw this coming.
We saw
and
this coming.
let's face it, he has not had to really debate anybody on a big
he's in a
primetime
one-party
stage.
state.
I mean, when you figure he would have had to debate what, Kinky Friedman, Carol Keefe Strayhorn, Rylander,
Bill White.
Right, Bill White, but he wouldn't debate. He wouldn't debate Bill White because he hit under you produce your tax records and then I'll debate you, and that never happened. So he's never had a huge platform by which to debate somebody who's really got some intelligence.
Yeah.
So I think when you're on that spotlight, you know, that red light is on, it's totally different. And I do think for a politician or somebody who wants to be in the highest office in the land, you have to have an ability to be able to debate and make a point, because you're arguing points all the time, point counterpoint.
Absolutely.
Let me bring up another candidate. Last weekend, Herman Cain suspended his campaign, but I think we all know that really
Yeah, like
means
suspended.
he ended his campaign.
Right.
And the conventional wisdom would be that the slew of accusations caught up to him. But I actually think his campaign was over even before that. Because if you look at the brain freeze on foreign policy questions
Libya.
and the sort of one-note, very thin message, 999, I actually don't think he'd be in a whole lot better shape right now, even if these women had not come forward. And then, of course, so many did, and his denials of them were just absolutely ridiculous. Was it over even before that?
I don't think so. I mean, I think he had a catchy message and he had enough oomph to keep going. Now, was he going to be the nominee? I don't think so. But I think he had himself in a position where he could continue. He could have been there
But
through
using
the campaign.
the people always get it
Yeah.
thinking, I think people were going to get it eventually, that beyond the catchy, he hadn't really thought this all the way
And he didn't have much of an
through.
organization as well. But, for example, the brain drain, I think, was totally attributable to the stress he was under, including, by this point,
Yeah.
Multiple
the
allegations.
accusations were out there.
That's true.
So, you know, I mean, it was coming apart
Very distracting.
organizationally and, you know,
Mentally.
in his head by that point. He was never going to be the nominee, but, you know, he might have been a player in some form or fashion, and I think he would have hung in there because he has a reason to hang in there. He was selling books. He's a radio talk show host. He had reasons.
We know
to-
those guys. They'll do anything. Of all the candidates in 2012, let's assume for the moment, for the sake of discussion, that President Obama is reelected next year. And so the Republicans will have this internal, oh my God, how did we blow this? It was in our grasp. There'll be this soul searching. There'll probably be a bloodbath. That's usually the case in a political party when they think they've snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. Who would come out of this, of these candidates, the strongest in 2016? Who would people say, oh, I'll wait 4 more years and I'll be looking at him again?
Probably nobody from
I don't
this
think
crowd.
anybody.
Nobody from this field, yeah.
No, this
Probably
crowd
not.
is not
Weak.
a stellar crowd anyway. But you got some. I mean, the Republicans have some real candidates in the stable. Eric Cantor, people like that. Governor of McDonnell of Virginia is very impressive.
Chris Christie.
Chris Christie is there in New Jersey. I think it's a whole new crop.
So
But Marco Rubio in Florida.
Right, exactly.
So this could be almost like a generational
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 change.
turnover.
You have those every once in a while.
Yeah. And if in fact the president is not reelected, if there is a Republican victory next year, which will be through no doing of the Republicans, as far as I can tell, then who would the Democrats be looking at next? Who's the next big? I tend to think it might be somebody like Andrew Cuomo. Who do you think is the next sort of big thing in the national Democratic Party?
Well, it's hard to say because the president has taken all the oxygen out of the room for the
As they
last
do, yeah.
6 years or so, you know, from the moment he arrived on the scene.
Right.
But I think you can never say that Hillary Clinton is finished, you know. She would be back. She'd still be at middle 60s, you know, and viable. Andrew Cuomo is there from New York, you're right. And you know, there's people in the Senate like Warner from Virginia, for example, and a handful of other, you know, attractive folks, including some new young congressional folks coming up. But it's hard. The president has so outdistanced the field that no one else has really had much of a chance to develop.
But the only person people are talking about today is Hillary. People are starting to, you know, even you read how some pollsters are saying, you know, should the president, for the good of the party, let her run? You know, you're hearing stuff like that, rumblings. So I think, you know, with her international experience, the job that she's doing as Secretary of State, and we all know she's not going to do that. But I think it does put her in a tremendous position, and I think her
and the women.
Oh, the women and her wisdom. I mean, the wisdom and the years of experience that she brings, having been near that office, having seen the mistakes, having been, I mean, so around it in so many different ways. I think she'd be a great.
You know, what's interesting about her too is she's an old-fashioned phenomenon in the sense that years ago, throughout most of our history, we elected presidents who were publicly reluctant to be chosen and did not campaign. And they were chosen by people almost by acclamation. We must have this person. This is the man of the moment. She's done more for herself, Trish, by not running, by not being in the political arena, at least, than she ever did when she was a candidate. But people forget she wasn't a very good candidate.
What I was going to say is if she decides that she's going to step up, and think of all the foreign policy experience she's gotten as Secretary of State. I mean, she'll be heads and shoulders above anybody.
Well, I think people will clamor for her participation.
Absolutely.
So she's the one to watch if the president is limited to one term.
I believe without a doubt.
Okay, all right, and maybe Andrew Cuomo.
Or even if he gets 2 terms, it's the same thing. I mean, it's 2016.
Well, the thing about
Either
Hillary,
way for her.
The thing about Hillary from a female standpoint, I mean, she's, say what you will about Hillary, but she's incredibly intelligent. And when you look at, compared to Republicans like a Sarah Palin or a Michelle Bachmann, there's no contest.
Well, it's intelligence matched to drive.
Right.
Determination. You know, she's got that quality.
Right, absolutely.
And she can honestly, unlike, you know, the governor, she can talk about how the economy was doing so well during the presidency of Bill. And so she can take the experience that she, you know, observed while she was there in the White House with the president, and I think she can apply that and say that, look, the Clintons are pro-business centrist Democrats.
I have to interrupt this Hillary love fest because we have to take a break, and we'll move on to some other things with Gang of Four. But first, on a Friday morning with Henry Cisneros, Jose Menendez, and Trish DeBerry Mejia on Gang of Four, here's Karen in the 550 KTSA newsroom.
So is at the top.
Hey, who's that guy?
It's the governor. Maybe future president. Who knows?
I think we all know.
Yeah.
With us on the gang today, Trish DeBerry Mejia, State Representative Jose Menendez, former San Antonio Mayor, and HUD Secretary Henry Cisneros. This week we heard that City Manager Cheryl Scully will extend her contract for 2 more years without a salary increase, although there's some extra money in there. People look at $355,000 a year, and they want to understand how that's a good deal. So let me start with you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, you were the mayor, you had a city manager. I don't know, I assume you're a fan of Cheryl Scully, everybody is.
I am.
How is she worth that kind of money? Explain that to people.
I think it's an easy call. I think it's a real easy call. San Antonio is a big city, and as a organization, it's a big enterprise. Tens of thousands of employees in very delicate jobs, from police and fire to airport and finance. She, on her watch, has moved us to a AAA bond rating. She is upfront on reshaping the economic development of the city. And, you know, any enterprise of that size, whether it be a corporation where the CEO is making $1 million, right, deserves a high-quality leader. And I think in the public sector, we ought not penalize people because they work for the public, because she'd be making that kind of money and a lot more in a private sector position of equal responsibility. So I don't have any problem with it at all. I think San Antonio right now is in a golden moment. We've got the Eagle Ford shale opportunity to the south. We have biotechnology burgeoning. We have downtown redevelopment occurring. We've got major projects like a new fire and police headquarters building being built, cooperation with the county on a whole range of things, including river extensions and hospital district. We're flying right now, and we need a top leader at the helm.
Do I understand you then to say that she should be seen more as a CEO than as a public official?
She is the CEO
Well, it's a
of
city
a
manager
major
form of
enterprise.
government.
We're in a council manager form where the mayor is the head of the policy-making structure that includes 10 members of the city council, but the organization of the city is run by the CEO that is the city manager.
And so comparing her to other public officials is like comparing, you would say, then apples and oranges, is that it?
Well, I think Henry just made the best comparison. I mean, the council is the elected board of the corporation, and she's the CEO. She's the day-to-day operations manager. If you look, like Henry said, any corporation of similar size and responsibility,
private sector.
The fact that she increased our bond rating to the highest that you can get, that saves the city in itself millions of dollars a year. And so every time we go out for bond elections that bring those necessary improvements, whether they be flood, street and drainage flood improvements, libraries, parks, whatever the case that the citizenry decides that we need, we can do it at a cheaper rate if we're a well-run city. And so I think you get what you pay for.
And I think she's well worth it because, Jack, until there's some kind of a charter change where we're actually going to pay city council people and representatives a little something, whether it's the median income, you're going to have folks that are running for office that are 22, 23, 24 years old. And not that I don't think a lot of them are not smart people, but they don't necessarily have the life experience that I think that you need to manage a $2 billion budget, which is, or more than that, which is what the city is. So, I think having Cheryl there, who offers that kind of life experience, I think, yes, you get what you pay for. And if you put her in the private sector, she'd be making far more than $355.
We're really blessed to have Cheryl Scully. We've had good city managers. Lou Fox served about 10 years. Alex Briseño served about 10 years. We've had a couple of other people in between. But Cheryl Scully she works at it all the time. Yes. She lives downtown. She works 24/7. She's energetic, stays physically fit in order to be energetic to do this job. I think we're fortunate to have her.
Do you like her more than Hillary? Just trying to see where she fits into this discussion.
Yeah, actually, I probably
you do.
do.
All right, there you go. That's very high praise then. Well, Mr. Mayor, I know you have to move along, and I appreciate your coming in and being part of Gang of Four today. And we're going to continue with Jose and Trish after we take the news break. It's
great to be with these two young people,
isn't it?
Who are of another generation from mine, younger, but we're blessed to have them both in civic and public service.
Thank you.
I'm glad all three
Merry
of you
Christmas
are
to
here
you all.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, same to you. Thank you for being here today. We take the break. More Gang of Four coming up, 5:50 KTSA. This, Donald Trump now coming out and saying, might have to cancel that. Not having not a lot of people are coming. You have a party. You don't want to order the party tray if it's just going to be you sitting there eating those little sandwiches. Cheese on a stick. The other thing he came out and said today is, I am now reconsidering running. So I don't know what these Republicans are thinking, not wanting to go to a debate moderated by a guy who'll be running against them. What an opportunity!
You know what I like? You never lost that on-air radio DJ personality. You're not boring.
He wants to have that. He wants to have that Lincoln Douglas debate. You have to have Lincoln and Douglas to have that. So anyway, his guest list only includes, at this point, Newt Gingrich and Rick Santorum. All of the others have said no, and now he may just cancel the whole thing. On our Gang of Four today, Mayor Cisneros had to go, but we still have Jose Menendez and Trish DeBerry Mejia. They're each going to do the work of a person and a half.
Exactly.
To make up. What did you guys think about the Donald Trump debate? What was your take on that? If it did in fact happen?
Just sounded like another television show for Don.
Well, Donald Trump
I was going to say it's a Trump stunt.
Yeah, a stunt is right. I mean, that guy is all about his publicity.
Right.
And how does he
celebrity
keep his
factor.
brand and his celebrity right?
Yeah.
Another chance for him to say you're fired. You know.
So are the Republicans who opted out, were they right to do that? Did they make the right call in saying they wouldn't go?
Yeah, because Donald Trump to me is a lot like Sarah Palin. She's no longer a politician. She's a celebrity. Right. So what's the credibility?
She's a celebritician.
Yeah. Well, right. So what's the credibility associated with a Donald Trump debate? I mean, I don't get it. Just like I don't understand why every Republican candidate, including Newt Gingrich, has to go and kiss the ring of Donald Trump. Right. Why?
Well, let me play devil's advocate with you.
Why?
Because you say credibility. But Wolf Blitzer moderated a debate, and then 2 days later he interviewed Kermit.
Well, I'm not saying Wolf is credible either.
I don't know that. I mean, is the credibility of the moderator the issue, or is it the fact that they've done so many of these?
It's the fact that it's Trump. Okay.
But I mean, they're not pals with John King or Bob Schieffer or any of these other guys.
But they're journalists.
Right.
They're journalists. I mean, they have a proven. That's what they do for a living every single
day.
In
theory, they're going to be neutral.
Donald Trump is a real estate developer. That's what his job is now. He's a television.
He's a citizen.
He's a citizen, average. But I would rather them go to a neighborhood meeting where you have regular, everyday citizens who aren't sitting there contemplating whether they're going to run or not, or whether they're going to write a big fat check to one of these guys. Yeah. I mean, so he's too close to them, to the process, to be neutral.
Objective. Yeah.
Now, I had people calling this morning saying, well, gee, on the other hand, isn't any chance you get to do media, any chance you get to reach people via television, and clearly there'd be a lot of curiosity, people would tune in to see what this was all about. I mean, don't you take advantage of any opportunity?
If you're running behind, yes. If you're behind. If you're out in front, I think you don't become...
So we know that's why Santorum is there.
Exactly.
But you said Newt agreed to it.
Yeah. Well, and Newt, look, I think Newt would show up for the opening of an envelope because I think he just likes to talk.
He likes to hear himself.
Yeah, exactly.
But a lot of people jokingly said Trump's going to do this and then announce none of these guys have the answer, I'm running. Now here he is practically saying that before the debate even happens.
You're all fired.
All right.
So I guess he's going to interview himself. Or he's going to ask questions of himself.
He'll interview his hair.
Yes.
He'll interview his hair.
So he'll say Newt and then he'll say, and Donald.
I want to ask you about this drone that the Iranians, have you seen the picture of it? They have it.
Oh,
they have it. They've got this thing. And it's cool looking, by the way. We would never have had a chance to see it had they not captured it. This thing looks right out of sci-fi. But anyway, my question is, with all this technology, how are we not able to just blow this thing up once it crashes or we see that they have it? We don't have a space weapon or something that can just... I mean, it's crazy to me that they've got this thing on display in Tehran in a public square, and there's nothing we can do about that.
I think if they're showing you something, it's because they're trying to project something that there's more there. You know, for all we know, it can be a big empty shell. Have we seen it work? I mean, many times. How many times have military or contractors come out with this great idea for a weapon, and it's just really an idea? Mm-hmm. It's a good idea.
Are you saying you're not sure that the drone ever worked?
I don't know. I have no proof whatsoever that the drones work. These guys always talk about blowing Israel off the map and doing all these things. So if they're so sure of themselves, why would they be showing it to us? I think they'd be using it.
It was ours. They captured it, and they're
so
showing
now it's
it.
Beating my chest, and look what we have.
It's a saber rattling thing. But the analysis from the experts is that this is bad because it has proprietary technology in it, stealth technology that the Chinese could reverse engineer. And so my point was, the minute you realize you've lost control of it, there should be a button you push and it's gone.
It evaporates.
I'd be surprised if we didn't have, look, every smartphone you have, corporations wouldn't be allowing people to use these smartphones if you can't have a remote wipe of the hard drive. I'd be shocked if we didn't have a remote wipe of the motherboard and the hard drive on that thing. So
I hope you're right.
It may just be the shell, and there's none of the technology itself can be actually used.
Or maybe like our phones, they'll drop the drone and it will stop working.
There you go.
All right, so a new study out says that young drivers, this is from the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, younger drivers in particular, and drivers across the board, are texting more than ever. This despite the fact that more and more states are forbidding texting while driving. In fact, Jose, 35 states now, with Pennsylvania being the most recent. You, of course, were pushing that way back here in Texas.
We passed it last session, and Governor Perry vetoed the no texting while driving.
We have the no texting in the school zones here in San Antonio. But I mean, is it possible that the law, that the approach of a law simply isn't going to work.
It is possible. Obviously, it's very difficult to moderate people's behavior. But if you're trying to sort of teach people early on, an example is when seatbelts came in. When seatbelts first came into fruition, everybody rejected them. Nobody wanted to wear them. I can still remember my dad complaining and not wanting to put on. But it wasn't until they passed well, you're going to get a ticket if you don't have your seatbelt on, that begrudgingly people started putting it on. Now our children, because they're used to being buckled in their seats, they just automatically put it on. They don't even think about it. So if we can, start modifying behavior at a younger age, where they're going through driver's school and they say, hey, you're not to text while driving. Hopefully we can create a newer generation of people that don't do it. That's my hope. I'm not sure. These kids seem to be addicted. They seem to text more than they actually talk
to each other.
Yeah.
I text more than I talk, and I'm not a kid, Jose.
Yeah.
But
And he likes it like that.
I do like it. I like the non-commitment
Right.
of texting. Yes, there's no hello, there's no
That's
goodbye.
right.
But here's I guess where I would differ with you. And by the way, I am no fan of texting while driving, so it's not that I disagree with your aim, but maybe just the means by which you achieve it. I think the actual breaking point for seatbelts was when they went from being an option on cars, where you actually had to buy a seatbelt for the car, to when they became standard. I think far more people adopted seatbelts as a result of their ubiquity, as a result of public service announcements, maybe seeing firsthand the carnage of wrecks.
Right.
By the time we got around to mandating it, I think you were just dealing with the small, sort of stubborn holdouts.
Could be.
And the idea then was not that they suddenly believed in seatbelts, but they did not want to get a ticket.
They didn't want to
so
get a
they
ticket.
were avoiding getting caught without a
Right.
seatbelt. They weren't embracing the seatbelt. Now the texting while driving laws, I believe, are just making people avoid getting caught, but they're not stopping the behavior. They may be lowering the phone a little more so that it's not visible.
I was going to say it's difficult to enforce.
Yes.
I think in theory it's probably a good idea. You should be focused on the road while you're driving and not multitasking. But yeah, I mean, to Jack's point, the fact that you can hold the phone down a little bit lower, or you're at a stop sign and you're texting.
And I've often wondered when they pull you over, how do they even?
Exactly.
How do they even? I mean, I'm going to say no, I wasn't.
Right.
Well, how are they going to argue that?
Yeah.
I guess where I'm coming from is this may be one of those times, I know politicians hate to hear this, when there is not a legal or political solution.
Yeah. You can't legislate morality, so you can't, you can't legislate common sense. I mean, not texting while driving is just a common sense,
it is.
Stay alive and keep others alive situation, but if folks want to get into an accident and not be looking at what's in front of them, then that's their problem.
One other idea, though, I read this today, says researchers have discovered how to stop drivers using their phones while they're driving. A team of researchers at Rutgers in New Jersey have created a system that uses the car's own Bluetooth connection and the speakers, the radio speakers, in the car to detect whether the phone is in use while the car is moving and shut it down. Your car shuts you down.
Wow.
Who's gonna? I mean, nobody's gonna opt for that.
No,
Right?
that's counterintuitive. I think if anything, you might want to shut the phone capacity for certain things off with its own GPS while it's moving. Because we all have, if you have a smartphone, you have the little map feature. You see the little ball moving while you run. So you could easily say, let's turn off the text features.
They make apps for phones that will disable your phone when you're in motion.
Right.
Really?
So it's almost like we're begging someone,
Stop me, please.
Stop me, pry this thing out of my hands while I'm driving.
Well, the thing is that most of us have been driving for any number of years. We understand the fact that sometimes you're going to have an emergency braking situation or avoidance maneuver.
Right.
Our kids don't. They think everything's perfect. Everything's going to be just fine. Everyone's going to stop at a red light or a stop sign.
Right.
They don't realize that sometimes that doesn't happen.
Exactly.
And so they're the ones we have to really be concerned with because they don't have the experience.
All right, on our Gang of Four, let me talk about another big story that we had on the show this week. It's not a big story; it's more of a big. It was more of a big discussion. But did you hear the story about the woman who was working at Macy's at River Center?
Sure.
And
transgender.
Yes, and she encountered a transgender customer. She apparently didn't handle that customer the way that Macy's would like her to, because the Macy's policy is that the transgender customer may use whatever fitting room or or facilities they want to. And she took issue with this and was fired. And now she wants the job back, but she says she would not be able, in good conscience, to enforce this rule. Right out of the box, if you're going to work for a company,
and you can't subscribe to their rules and regulations.
You got to do what the rule is.
Right.
That having been said, should transgender people use whatever facilities they feel comfortable in, or should it be original equipment determines which room you're in, or how do we, what do we want to see happen here?
I don't know.
Well, they love this question.
Yeah, right. That's a difficult topic.
See, my theory, I'll get it started. I have nothing against anybody. I'm all for everybody in the pursuit of happiness, but I just think it's an original equipment determination,
Yeah,
just for the interest of common sense.
Yeah.
You're going to freak people out otherwise, and I'm happy for you to be whoever you are, but you got to show a little consideration.
Well, you know, and this is what I think people need to think about. Those of us who are adults, and if we're there, we can. If you're aware of what may or may not encounter in this changing area, well, then you know, maybe Macy's needs to make their policy a little more evident to everyone, because what concerns me is children. You know, I sometimes have to take my children shopping, and you know, I'll tell my 11-year-old or my 9-year-old little girl, go try these on and come out and show me. Well, I don't want her, you know.
You don't want a guy in there with her.
I don't want a guy in there.
Even if he's made up like a woman.
Right.
I don't, and that's a concern. And so if I know that a store has that policy, you're not trying on clothes here.
Or you have to go with them.
No, I'm not going to go into the ladies' changing area.
You could take them into the men's changing.
I could do that, and I've done that. And sometimes I've had to take, I'll tell my other kids, watch the door. I'm taking everybody to the men's. Yeah. And maybe they have an optional family changing area or something separate.
Yeah.
I think you have to be careful, because you got to think about the whole picture, not just
what's politically correct.
Right.
Yeah. So many of these issues could be handled better if everybody would just agree to be reasonable. You know,
why can't you have a transgender dressing room?
How many dressing rooms are we going to have, Trish?
Well, you have one.
Wrong with them. I just think that if you're transgender, it isn't as if you're not Rosa Parks giving up her seat on the bus. If you just say, look, I realize that this is shocking for people. People are not used to this. I'm gonna go to the original equipment side of things and just be cool about it, so that there's no issue. Or I'm going to try my clothes on at home and return them in 30 days with my receipt if they don't.
So you think the onus is upon the transgender?
Everybody. It's on everybody.
Really?
It's on everybody a little bit. I mean, I don't expect stores to provide 5 different dressing rooms.
Well, I don't either.
Or whatever. Hey, I'm thrilled to find one dressing room. Usually I can't find. It's like the holy grail at some of these stores, just finding the dressing room, right?
Right.
But I mean, I think everybody just needs to be reasonable. You're not making a stand by trying on a pair of jeans at Macy's.
Right.
And you know, but I guess if I was in their shoes, I would say, well, every time I compromise or retreat, that's another setback for my cause or my side or whatever, my team. Isn't that the trap,
yeah,
right?
the home team.
Now, why should I have to give in, Jack?
Right.
Why can't you give in?
Yeah, and I think this is the onus is on Macy's or any store, because their policy is how they decide who we want to be here or who we don't want to be here and who we want to be comfortable. And so it's up to them to decide. All I want to know is what the rules are.
You want to know what to expect before you encounter it.
That's exactly right.
All right. Very good. Well, we're back with the lightning round of Gang of Four. It's 11:22 on the News and Talk of San Antonio, 550 KTSA. Here's Karen.
Donald Trump questioning Michelle Bachmann's loyalty. He said